Hi, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Steve Harney, and I'm the founder of Keeping Current Matters. We want to discuss today's housing inventory and its impact on home prices. Before we even get started with that, I want to make sure you're all set up for later this week. All right? Later this week, we're all going to, or the vast majority of us are going to enjoy Thanksgiving dinner together with family, and we're going to see a whole bunch of family that we probably haven't seen in a while. And in that meeting, there's going to be people that we haven't seen for a year, 2 years, 3 years. The challenge is one of those people, we probably see every year, is Uncle Charlie. Uncle Charlie is a really, really nice guy. He's one of the funniest guys in our family. But Uncle Charlie thinks he knows everything about everything. He's about 55 to 58 years old. He still lives in his mother's basement, but he watches YouTube all the time. So he knows exactly what's happening in the housing market, and he knows it's about to crash. And he's going to come to your Thanksgiving dinner saying that. All right, we all have a Uncle Charlie type in our family. I want you to be prepared not to change his mind that day. I want you to be prepared to make sure he doesn't change anybody's mind that day and believe what he's saying. So what we did last week is we put together a webinar, the 3 keys to eliminating fear in today's housing market. And what we did there is we wanted to make sure that you had 7 slides covering the most important things that you could possibly cover that could come up this Thanksgiving dinner, and that you'll be able, while you're talking about it, to show a picture of it, meaning, the old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So what I would suggest anyone do, that if you're going to be getting together with family, it's for Thanksgiving or any other time this holiday season, I would suggest that you look at the replay, look down at the bottom, visit trykcm.com webinar, to watch the replay, and download those 7 slides. They're already set up to fit on your phone and look beautiful on your phone. This way, you'll be seen as the housing expert in your family this year coming up, or in your neighborhood. Remember, there's a lot of times we get together this time of year, whether it be a party, whether it be a gathering at our house of worship. There's a bunch of times where we're together with people we don't see that often during the year. And this is your time to shine, especially since real estate's definitely going to be one of the major topics. But let's get back to what we talk about here at Deep Dive. Talking about the fact that we want you to look like an expert and be able to explain everything. Our mantra is most agents know what's happening. Good agents understand what's happening. Great agents can explain what's happening. And again, we believe very, very strongly here at KCM that the easiest way to do that is by you understanding what's taking place. But to explain it, we like to give you as many visuals as we can so that you can easily, simply and effectively explain the point that you're making. But today we're talking about inventory and how it's going to impact pricing. There's a lot of talk about inventory starting to come up, and it's been down at bare bottom for a while now, so of course it was eventually going to come up. But I want you to understand, we're nowhere near where we were prior to the pandemic. So even though inventory is increasing, it's not increasing out of control. People like to try to think back on 2008 and say, well, in 2008, inventory shot up. Well, yeah, it shot up into, instead of having normal 6 months inventory, we got up to 9, 10, 11 months inventory. Right now, we're sitting at about between 3 and 4 months inventory. So we're nowhere near we don't have an overabundance of inventory. But we do have to understand that, generally speaking, housing markets where inventory has returned to pre-pandemic levels, because there are some, have experienced weaker home price growth over the past year. Conversely, housing markets where inventory remains far below pre-pandemic levels have, generally speaking, experienced stronger home price growth over the year. So look at your MLS. If your inventory is where it was prior to the pandemic, then you're not going to see the same price appreciation that you will if your inventory is still way short. And we'll talk about that in a second, because what it comes down to is basically supply and demand. So what we can see, if we compare to last year, we're not comparing this to 2017, 18, and 19, but if we compare to last year, there are still parts of the country that have less inventory now than they did last year. And there's some in the blue that have more. But again, there's almost no areas, but check your MLS for your local area. There's almost no area that has more inventory than they did pre-pandemic. And that's really what is the gauge here, ladies and gentlemen. So when we talk about the uptick in inventory right now, I think that this quote from Lance Lambert, the founder of Resi Club Analytics, says it best. Housing market inventory is so far below pre-pandemic levels that October's big jump is still just a drop in the bucket. So again, that's basically where we are. Is inventory increasing? Yes, thank God. We have more houses for buyers to take a look at. Is it increasing out of control? Absolutely not. And the reason that it's not increasing out of control and not increasing more than it has been is we know there's a lock-in rate, meaning that if we're right now at 7.5% mortgage rates and someone has a 4% mortgage rate, it's real tough for them to sell and buy a new house at 7.5%. So we call that a lock-in rate. And what that's caused is new listings come into the market, meaning people that have their home now, and most people that own a home now, if they bought prior to the middle of 2022, have pretty good mortgage rates, some sensational mortgage rates, some under 4%, and there's even some that have under 3% mortgage rates. But we're still seeing new listings are below the previous pre-pandemic years. And the lock-in rate that I just spoke of, that's the main reason, 21%. But there are other reasons too. People that are in their house, they just like their house. They have no intention of moving anytime soon. That's in pretty much any market. And they're worried about home prices are too high to buy another home right now. Now, some of that is some confusion on the seller's part because they don't realize the amount of equity they have. If they bought the house several years ago, they have tremendous equity. So they could really eat into the price of whatever house they're buying and take out a much smaller mortgage. Excuse me one second. But the locked-in rate is still the number one reason, but it's not the only reason, and I want everyone to understand that. So what does that mean? If we take a look at new listings, we can still see that they're below previous years, all right? Meaning that that black line, which represents this year, is less new listings coming to the market. But I do want you, than there were in the previous years, even the pandemic years. But I want you to take a look at where that black line is headed. It's a little different than the previous years, and we're going to come back to that in a second. Now, again, the reason we're talking so much about inventory right now is inventory will impact prices. What winds up taking place, everything is the supply and demand. So if supply is increasing, we have to take, is demand increasing at the same time? So let's take a look at home prices. So far, there's been a tremendous balance between the amount of homes coming on the market and the amount of buyers out there. Now, a year ago, there was a disparity. There was more demand than there was inventory. And even at the beginning of this year, if we take a look here, we'll see that. Here is the 49-year average of how houses move in price. Each month, how much does a house increase in value on average over the last 49 years? And we can see going into the buying season, appreciation accelerates, meaning houses gain more value each month, all the way up to May. And as we go into summer, they don't appreciate as much. Appreciation starts to decelerate. And as we get to the back end of the year, the back quarter of the year, the appreciation decelerates pretty dramatically, that we're barely over zero. And that's a normal market, ladies and gentlemen. Where are we this year? Well, at the beginning of the year, there was still that whole challenge with making up for the beginning of the year before, beginning of 2022, where appreciation just got out of control. We had to make some adjustment to that. So January and February were a little bit below the 49-year average. Then March, April, and May were a little bit above it. But what we're seeing now over the last couple of months, and August is the last month that Case-Shiller reported on, so that's the most current number, we can see we're going back to normal appreciation. That's where we're at right now, ladies and gentlemen, normal appreciation. So if we're at normal appreciation, what do we have to do? Well, is that going to continue? Well, what impacts prices? Supply versus demand. We have to always remember it's all about supply and demand. So now there's some confusion of what's happened over the last couple of years. And I want to try to the best of my ability, alleviate some of that confusion. So if we take a look at what normally happens in a normal market, new listings come to market, they're added to the active listings, the listings available for sale. A certain percentage of those active listings, not all of them, but a certain percentage, then get transferred over to the pendings, meaning a certain percentage of those listings sell. And for the most part, most of those, if not all of those pendings, turned into closed sales. That's what happens in a normal market. The active listings that get moved over to pendings are replenished by new listings coming to the market. So I want you to take a look at this for a little bit and look at the red arrows. New listings come to the market, join the active listing. A certain percentage of the active listings move over to the pendings, then over to close. And in a normal market, we'll have somewhere between 5 and 6 months inventory, because the number of houses that are selling sort of equals the number of houses coming to the market. Now, what's happened during the pandemic years? New listings almost never made it to the active list. As soon as we took a listing, it kind of sold. It sold within a couple of days with multiple offers on it. So it never had the chance to join the actives. At the same time, whatever we had available as that pandemic hit, we started eating into that also. So the pendings went up pretty dramatically. The closings went up pretty dramatically. But what happened? The actives, the amount of houses we had for sale, dropped pretty dramatically. They were being sold off to the pendings, as we normally do, but the new listings weren't replenishing the actives. They were going directly to pendings. So when you're sitting with someone, and you're trying to explain, because there's a lot of misconception about, well, inventory is really, growing pretty dramatically. Well, let's talk about that for a second. So what's taking place today? Today, not every new listing that's coming into the market is getting eaten up by the pendings. Demand has fallen off because interest rates have skyrocketed, but demand has fallen off. So the amount of pendings and amount of closed, the amount of transactions we're doing are less. So when a new listing comes in, some of those new listings are going back to replenish the active inventory, and some of those new listings are still getting gobbled up immediately. So again, let's go back. Normal market, new listings replenish actives, actives turns into pendings, pendings turn into close. During the pandemic years, the new listings barely went to actives. They almost all went directly to pendings and then to closings. That's why we had so many transactions then. And that's why we had, offers 20, 30, 40% over asking price. There were no listings taken. Every new one that came out was like a piece of gold. Now we're in a different market. We're not back to, there's enough listings out there because demand is still high, that we don't have to gobble up those new listings. Those new listings are being gobbled up. And I think I want to talk a little bit in a second about why the actives are as strong as they are that are not new listings. Because the other thing that we're seeing is some houses are staying in the market 90, 120 days. How come they're not selling as quick as some of the new listings? But again, going back to the normal, the pandemic years and today, we can see that in a normal season, we have about 5 months inventory. Then during the pandemic, we went down to even less than 2 months inventory. And today, is it greater than during the pandemic years? Yes, people are talking about that. Inventory is greater than what it was. But it's still about 3 months inventory, nowhere near the 5 months it was in a normal market. Again, if you take those 4 slides, if you're a broker or a manager, please share that with your agents. If you're an agent and you have a consumer that's confused about that, please share that with your consumers. Because there's some crazy stuff being saying, there's so many listings coming to the market, prices have to crash. Well, no. Demand is still meeting supply. And further proof of that is here is the 23 at the end of year, what they project prices will be for the full year. So where these numbers were a lot more red in January of 2023, meaning a lot of people expected prices to drop, some pretty dramatically, 10, 15, 20%. They're now taking a look at the first 9 months of the year, 10 months of the year, and trying to look out for the next couple of months. And they're saying this is where we're going to wind up sometime this year. Now, I want you to understand, if we average in those 6, we come to 4.6%. 4.6% is almost exactly what the 75-year average of price appreciation is. So what are we having this year? A pretty normal year. Why does it not feel normal? Because we've come off a couple of years where we had 15, 18% appreciation. And some of these numbers have been adjusted pretty dramatically. The NBA, up until last month, thought that we were going to finish this year 1.5%. They just upped theirs to 5.7%. Fannie Mae was in about, I think it was 2%, and they upped theirs to 6.7%. So what they're realizing this year was a lot better from a pricing standpoint than anyone thought. Why was that? Everyone thought there'd be a lot of listings, there wouldn't be a lot of sales, and if we had a big supply and very little demand, what happens to prices on anything? They go up. But what wound up taking place is because of the lock-in rate, the supply didn't come the way a lot of people expected it to come. Demand stayed stronger than what most people thought it was going to stay. And therefore, we got into a little bit more of a normal market. The challenge is, the way that happened is transactions took a nosedive. There were less listings, but there was also a lot less demand. So even though the supply and demand balanced out, they balanced out at a number that were less transactions. And I think that's about to change, ladies and gentlemen. I think that what we're going to see, the thing that caused a lot of hesitation by both buyers and sellers, were the mortgage rates. Well, we see now 3 of the last 4 meetings, the Fed have decided to pause. And there is some thinking that they're going to continue to pause. And if that happens, what we'll see is rates, and there's a lag time to this, rates coming down. The brand new MBA, Mortgage Bank Association, projections show that they think they're going to be 7.1 in the first quarter of next year and get into the 6s by the middle of the year. I've always said that if we see 6ers, if the number 6 starts to rate, there's going to be a surge of activity. I won't say a flood or a tsunami, but there's going to be a surge of activity. More buyers are going to jump off the fence, and more sellers that have been holding on to that 4% rate, even though they know they have to move, for whatever lifestyle reason they have to move. They're going to say, well, between 4 and 6 is better than between 4 and 8, which is what it was. Maybe now's the time. So I think this year, as we're heading into this year, I think more and more listings are going to sell, and I think we're going to have more listings to sell. So let's talk about that for a second. This is vitally important. The next 2 slides I want to show you. If you get nothing out of anything I said today, this is the most important thing. I showed you this graph before, and new listings are definitely below previous years. But if we take a look at the dotted line, black dotted line, that would be as if new listings took the normal trajectory this time of year. If new listings did what they normally do this time of year, what we would see, ladies and gentlemen, is they would be dropping off much more dramatically. But they're not. They're kind of trying to hold on. So there's more new listings coming to the market as a percentage than there was in the past. And I think that black line is going to go at least through the red line, which was last year. And as we move closer into the new year, I think it's going to catch and surpass those other lines, meaning we're going to have more new inventory than we normally have that time of year. What does that mean? Well, if mortgage rates are starting to head a little bit south and inventory is starting to pick up, there's going to be a lot more transactions. And that's important that we understand that. It's crucially important that we understand that. We're in a situation right now, ladies and gentlemen, that I really, really think that we're in a good place heading into 2024 to have a fantastic year. Now, one of the things that will really determine if you have a great year, if you have a listing that hasn't sold in the last 20 days, you have a pricing issue, ladies and gentlemen. It's not a market issue. It's not a location issue. It's not a condition issue. Because all of those issues can be taken, can be corrected by putting the right price on it. Well, the house is kind of a mess. And in today's world, millennials don't really like to buy a messy house. They want a finished product. They want it to be shining, looking really good. Well, that's definitely true. The days of sweat equity, many people think, are behind us. But I think that part of the challenge was that even the messed up houses were overpriced for their condition. So what winds up taking place is condition wasn't really taken into consideration as much. We kind of just said, well, we'll sell the good ones and the old ones. They just have to understand that they're old or that they're not updated or they need some repair. Well, one of the ways to make that correction, if the homeowner doesn't want to do the repair or the renovations, is to adjust that in price. And people will say, well, this house is pretty messed up, Steve. I don't know if it will sell at any price. And my answer to that is always the same. Will it sell for $1? Oh, yeah, of course. Will it sell for $10? Well, yeah, Steve, don't be ridiculous. Of course it will. How about $100,000? Yeah, Steve, why are you saying this? How about 100,000? How about 200,000? And as long as you're saying to me, oh, that's ridiculous, Steve, I'm going to keep on going. But I'm going to hit a number where you're going to say, well, I think so. And I'll bet you the number that you think so is below the list price right now. Well, I think we'll sell at that. That's the number you should look at, and maybe even a little bit below that number. We have to get the easiest way to go get listings right now, ladies and gentlemen, is not to find people that want to put their house on the market, is to find the people that have already decided to put their house on the market, but price it incorrectly. Now, whether it's your listing, whether it's an expired listing, you have to go in there prepared to negotiate the price. Because there is some price on that house that will sell. Now, that price might not be acceptable to the seller. I get that. But let's not us make that decision assuming that. Let's sit with every one of those sellers and let them make that decision. Of course, I think the quickest way to inventory right now is to have to sit down and have something we haven't had to have with the seller for a while. Tough conversation. Good agents know how to deliver good news. Great agents know how to deliver tough news. And you and I both know that some of you sellers, you need to have a tough conversation right now. And I think, I understand, I believe, no matter what news is out there in the paper, that when an agent makes his promise or her promise or their promise, they stand by it. The 1.5 million realtors tell the truth. It might be an exception here and there. I get it. In every profession, there's some bad players. But most agents, when they sit with a homeowner taking a listing, they're telling them the truth. And they're making promises. And you made two promises to them when you took the listing. Number one, you're going to do everything in your power to make sure the house sells. And number two, you're going to be honest with them. Ladies and gentlemen, those two promises you have to keep right now. If it's price, tell them the truth, because you're going to do everything in your power to get the house sold. And if what is required right now is a tough conversation with the seller, let's have it. That's my message to you today. Finishing up, I do want to let you know that Real Talk is the supply of homes for sale growing. We have we do a video for you we prepare a video for you every single week that ties right into the deep dive. So you can go ahead and get, for KCM members that have the Real video option available to them, you have a script already laid out. You have visuals already laid out. All you have to do is put the camera in front of you and go and read the script. We make it as simple as pie for you, and videos are crucially important. We need to make sure that we're getting inventory right now. All right. Next week, we're going to talk about something a little bit different. At first, when this was brought up to me, I said, really? Is there really a side hustle for millennials in real estate? Well, you know what we do here at KCM? We research it. And after the research came in, I was like, oh my God, you're right. You know, we kind of concentrate on the millennial that can't afford their first house right now. That's what's in the news. But there are millennials and there are Gen Z buyers that are right now buying some of those difficult properties that need repair. There's a group of millennials and Gen Z that are rolling up their sleeves, that understand the value of sweat equity, and they're purchasing those houses and they're going. It could give you a new buyer source. So we're going to dive deep on that next Monday, right? We're going to tell you exactly what's the opportunity in front of you and exactly how to go after that opportunity and to help those young people use real estate as an investment to build their wealth. And again, I know there are a lot of millennials that can't afford their first house. My heart goes out to them. We try our best to try to get affordability where it needs to be. But again, there's another group of people the same age that do have the money, that are using that money to take advantage of the housing market right now. Let's learn how to talk to those people too. Let's learn how to help those people too. Well, as I say at the end of every week, you gave me a half hour of your life. I hope you feel that you got a great return on that investment. That's what our goal. And I'll see you next week.